bebizwe ngelinye igama kodwa ngiyafisa mongameli ukuthi
obani baba labo
sithi nje ucizelela kulona mongameli ngoba udabo security nawo laziyo mongameli
usho lo lamandiya
yeah
amandiya mfowethu alukho sensitive.
It doesn't matter. So the 16th of November is a very auspicious day in the South African Indians calendar. To cut a very long story short, on the 16th of November 1860, Indians first landed on South African soil. I found this on the internet. It says on the 16th of November 1860, 342 indentured Indian laborers landed at Addington Beach in Durban on South Africa's east coast after venturing across the Indian Ocean.
Sure.
Like we're like these fantastic explorers. Why did we come here? Can you do it in like one sentence, Dad?
No, it was...
In one sentence? Yes. I can feel one long story coming.
It was mainly the British who were here and wanted to plant sugarcane, but were unable to get local labor to work on the farms. So they decided to use Indian labor, and Indian labor was accustomed to sugarcane in India and knew all about it, so they decided to offer them the opportunity to come here and work.
The growth of a resident Indian population in South Africa was never intended by the white officials there, was opposed by official policy, but was effectively stopped only in the Orange Free State, which brought in no indentured laborers. In Natal, the indentured laborers often remained after their contracts had expired, even though they were entitled to a free return trip to India. Only the need to placate the British colonial government of India prevented the law from being harsher and prescribing criminal penalties for failure to return home. While many Indians did return to India, many others did not. The latter either made the financial sacrifices necessary to purchase the pass, or else simply evaded the law. Their relative prosperity led others in India to sail directly to the Transvaal. As a resident Indian population grew, whites in the Transvaal created political pressure for restrictions on the Indians. The Orange Free State simply barred Indians entirely, and only a negligible number settled there in violation of the law. The early Indian market gardeners were largely illiterate people, living in shanty housing and carrying baskets of produce door to door to eke out a living. They were noted for their long hours of work, through the day and into the night. Some were seen weeding their gardens by moonlight. Only slowly, over the years, did they rise to a modest level of living, in some cases eventually buying a truck to deliver their produce, or moving from a shanty into a tiny house. Many Indians learned an African language and employed African assistants. They were hated by the Europeans as unfair competition and denounced by the Africans as exploiters. The government's issuance of licenses to engage in various trades likewise discriminated against the Indians, though it did not wholly exclude them. Indian resistance to discriminatory policies was organized by a young attorney from India named Mohandas K. Gandhi. His political career and nonviolent resistance techniques began in South Africa before they were applied in India. By and large, however, the repression of the Indians, among others, remained an enduring feature of South African life, especially after apartheid. Relations between Indians and black Africans were also often marked by antagonism. In Durban in 1949, a fight between a black youth and an Indian shopkeeper escalated into a mass riot in which 142 people were killed. Despite the opposition of both blacks and Indians to apartheid, it was difficult for them to make common cause politically, though some cooperation slowly emerged. Still, ironically, black and Indian opposition to apartheid was itself largely separate racially. Another African Indian riot erupted in Durban in 1985, with African mobs looting Indian stores and destroying Indian homes.
What's fueling tensions between black and Indian South Africans? In early July, South Africa was a war zone the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma for failing to cooperate with a corruption probe sent thousands of his supporters to the streets. The protests quickly spiraled into deadly riots and looting across several cities. It was South Africa's worst unrest since apartheid.
Protests and looting erupted across the country.
I'm looting because we apply for jobs, they don't give us jobs. We try and go to offices, try a strike, it doesn't even work.
Many are blaming the destruction on pent-up rage and frustration, anger at the government's failure to tackle high unemployment and rampant corruption. But when the riots broke out, one group in particular became a target.
For South Africa's Indian diaspora, it's a precarious situation. Many of them are under attack. Their shops have been singled out and looted.
After pictures of looters streamed across television, anonymous WhatsApp messages started spreading like wildfire. They warned of more attacks on Indian communities. In Phoenix, a suburb of Durban, vigilante groups began forming. Determined to protect themselves and their property, they set up roadblocks, and many innocent people got caught up, in some cases with deadly consequences.
The term Phoenix Massacre coming under the spotlight yesterday at the South African Human Rights Commission's hearings into the unrest. 36 people died in that area alone during the period of violence and looting. A number of racially motivated attacks were reported, which the Commission is now investigating.
What we see is this very same arrogance where they make themselves proud and spit in the face of the bereaved families and spit in the face of our human rights as a black people, where they call themselves they are heroes by slaughtering black people. So for social cohesion to be accepted and to be effective, we need to start with the realistic issues, make the communities understand where they did wrong, and let them accept that they did wrong.
All Indians have historically been from 2 to 3% of the population of South Africa.
Alukho sensitive udaba oluyiqiniso ngoba masizulu singalikhuluma iqiniso yonke lento ethinta amandiya amakhula asesijwayele kabe kakhulu kuleliso ngiyabonga nje ukuthi uthinte lo mbuzo ngoba ngempethu ngempela mangabuka njengamanje mina ngizosungula icampaign yokuthi sihambe ke amafethi si-interview abantu sibe nama platform kuma social media ko TikTok ko Facebook si debate i-behavior yamandiya in this country especially Natal uwabona ukuthi mswaphatha kahle kabe amandiya efika lapha 150 years ago amandiya afika phatheka kahle athola uzinzo kodwa wona manje asenane amyawo kuthiwa i-reaction asene amyawo abhiza sule yawo M23 amandiya ngoba afuna ukusidudula alwe nathi athi ahlabana ngathi ngo-2021 mina ngiyazi mina ngihlala namandiya ngazi kahle ngihlala ngalalela futhi ukuthi akhulumani ayishayisa ifuba into ayenza kubantu abamnyama abantu abafaya aba-more than 1000 uyakhumbula ukuthi ngo-1949 yaba khona impi yamandiya uyakhumbula ukuthi uMbongeni Ngema ngo-2004 wazwabizwa uMandela ngayo indaba yamandiya ukuthi amandiya awavoti bayivotela belungu siphilela uLotho nopake iphupho lakho mna naye izinto lezi engishoyo mina njengongizwe umlando kaMchunu ngithi mina if ugovernment wethu baba sezomchunu njengobaba wethu kwi-security cluster ngiyacela ukuthi kungenelele ukhuduze iPhoenix akuma-drugs laphana yona mkhumbi osaplayela zonke indawo lezi ezibulala izwe lethu ngiyacela ukuthi kungenelele lapho baba Mkhonazi kungenelele ibehavior yamakula isiphumile esandleni kulelizwe futhi mengabe ingasukunyelwa izogcina ngempela iphume esandleni awubuka ama-call center mangelela ama-call center laphana ufica indiya reception ufica indiya ku-HR ufica indiya liyi-manager ufica indiya likuphi eliningana nalo lenza kathi likuphethe nehola makinati awutholi ibhonasi uyakhahlanyezwa unika amasemisho 3 kuthiwa hewa ungavubeli WhatsApp ningasulwaza ayethelela manje ayikho into angayenzi akhululeke aze naba kwaze kweqa. This is a disaster in waiting. If we don't solve this problem now, something is coming. Something is coming. We will kneel and pray to our ancestors that they may protect us to this disaster.
Ningizimu Afrika umongameli wamabhinqa imvumamvumane evunywa lasemelika ngisho Obama umthakathi wendaba uyivumele indaba.
Jwayele ngabe umsundisi nje amakhulu.
And after decades of government failure to address unemployment, it might seem easy to blame a group you think is unfairly doing better. On the other side, that same failed government might force one group to take matters into their own hands when necessary.
Have you ever had a white or black come up to you and say like, so how often do you go back to India? Have you ever had that?
No.
No, I've never had that. And that's because to other South Africans, we're just as South African as them.
We belong here.
Yeah. Like our South Africanness is never questioned.
Only Julius will question.
Internally fragmented and facing antagonism from blacks and whites alike, Indians have been very vulnerable in South Africa, both during the era of white minority rule and in the subsequent era of black rule.